Hey, I received a great question about the reconciliation of God's omnipresence, that He's everywhere present. Passages like Psalm 139, there's nowhere we can flee from God's presence. And then this description of hell in 2 Thessalonians 1:9 that says that the reality of God's punishment will be away from the presence of God and from the glory or the majesty of His power. Whenever we look at God's attributes, it's important to recognize that He has full and complete control over His attributes. Jesus, for instance, the incarnation of Christ, He willingly laid aside the independent exercise of His divine attributes. There were things He said He didn't know. There are places He wasn't in His incarnate state. There is a complete control over God's divine attributes. And to speak of hell as a place where God has removed His presence and the glory of His power is clearly a distinction between what God can do and what God chooses to do. Now, God can clearly be anywhere He wants to be, but hell apparently is a place where there's a thoughtful removal of His presence and of His gifts, His glory, His majesty. It is a place of darkness, not light. It's a place of punishment and not blessing, the things that are inherent to who God is. It is a place in many ways of passivity from God. But remember, this is a place that God created. Scripture is very clear on that. Jesus said it's a place created for the devil and his angels, and it's also a place, He says, where there then He will cast those who are unrepentant. But it is not a place that's out of God's control. It is a place of God's control. It's a place of God's measured and just retribution. So He has to measure everyone's experience there. So He's overseeing this reality, but He is willfully and decisively removing His active presence. And again, the point is that the good that comes with God's presence, whereas the New Jerusalem is the exact opposite of this, where God's throne now dwells among men. That's a place where His presence and His gifts will be felt. It's evident. It's strong in that presence. But in hell, in the lake of fire, it is decidedly and in a measured way removed. And depending on your life on earth, because you're judged according to your deeds, that experience will be varied based on how one lived their lives.